Casual.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Craig Robertson. How are you today?
I'm good, Martin. I should have said I got a message from Chris Middleton who wished me good luck, which made me think, what am I in for?
Did you?
Look,
It's all right.
but I'm doing well under the conditions of being locked down and not being able
Are you still at work, Craig,
to
as
see
well?
people or play. Yeah, we've been working most of the time from home. We were because we worked in school sport, we were in school when we were allowed to. And then as of next week, there will be some children back in, but not for sport-specific activities.
What age is it? Is it a normal school? What is the School of Sport?
The School of Sport is a national centre of excellence for secondary school pupils based at Bellhouston Academy. So got 5 sports, badminton being one of them. And the young people arrive first year, or they can arrive in later years. You can come in further down the line, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th year. But it's an opportunity just to combine your studies with your sport.
And what's the criteria for getting in? How do they get in? How are they chosen? Yeah.
For badminton,
just anything.
Yeah, but mainly we'll chat about badminton stuff because it's different for the gymnast, for example. By the time you're 12 as a gymnast, you need to have 4, 5, 6 years in the bank.
Really? Wow.
Whereas badminton, you can pick it up at 10, 11, 12 years, and have an opportunity and have that potential. So it varies between the sports, but there's a criteria, a selection process, and we look to just whittle it down and try and attract players to come.
And how many people are there, I feel like?
All in for the 5 sports, we've got about 110 at the minute.
Isn't it a fantastic facility?
So it's a great opportunity. If I had that, I had good opportunities as a kid starting to play sport. But if a school like that was there for many of us that are my age, it would have made a difference to. And it's not for everyone, but it's an opportunity for you to then go. I think for me, it was quite good recently. If you watched the European team during the week. But out of the team, 6 or 7 of them had been former School of Sport pupils and have now gone on to the national team. And that's amazing. Kind of similar in a lot of the sports.
And the far and wide, where do they come from to be into that?
At the minute, there's about 14 or 15 local authorities throughout Scotland represented. You need to arrive for school for 10 to 9 each day. So if you lived in Aberdeen, you can't commute. But we do have athletes in many of the sports. Scott Waddle and Erin Waddle, for example, they travelled. They moved from Stonehaven, I think it was, located into Glasgow, and then came to the school.
That's what you call parental dedication, isn't it? That's absolutely phenomenal, right? That's absolutely. And is it mirrored anywhere else in the UK?
Not in the model that we've got. There's different sports schools for different sports and different types, but the sort of model that we've got, money coming through Scottish Government, and it's Glasgow Life and Glasgow City Council Education Department, the work in partnership to make it happen. So I think we're kind of aligned, not in a sports sense, but with the music school, which I think is in Plockton. There's a few different things, but in Scotland we're the only one that do that. It's
absolutely amazing. And so, sorry, did you tell me how somebody gets chosen to do it, to come? Are they chosen? Does somebody apply to come?
There's an application process here.
Brilliant.
We look to, if you come along and you've already been playing in a national programme, for example, or a regional programme, you've got some experience. But it is possible for us to look at a player and think, right, we think they've got some potential, sort of on an athletic and sort of maybe core skills, coordination, balance, agility, that type of thing. And we give a fair trial to
Isn't it brilliant?
Who do come along, and sometimes are disappointed. Young people that don't make the programme, but we invite them to come down, further down the years in 3rd year, 5th and 6th.
So what age would they start? Sorry, did you say would they come in? Like, for what age would somebody say, I think you should come?
Normally we'll look for them to come in S1. So leaving primary 7 and
that's the dream. That's probably the dream, right, for a lot of people. When you think about your childhood, if that was someone there, you think, wow, that is someone else, right?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, when I started, all I wanted to do was play badminton.
Yeah, me too.
By the time I was coming to secondary school, it was only, I was quite fortunate of the sort of start that we got. You asked me when you gave me the call about the hall in Faulthouse.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So it was the community centre that my dad worked in. He was actually a janitor in the centre.
This is obviously the old one, right?
Well, the same hall
Is
now,
it?
but the old centre. But he worked there from about 1978, 79 time. I think maybe around about 79, 80. I started going in and playing some badminton, doing lots of sports to be fair.
Yeah.
Started playing some badminton, and then things just picked up.
Amazing.
So
good. Let's go on with the questions, Craig. Right? He's got some routine questions for you. So your full name, first of all.
My name is Craig Edward Wood Robertson.
Edward Wood.
I've got some middle names, yeah.
Where did they come from? Do you know?
Well, I was adopted as a child before. I was maybe only months old. I was adopted, and my adoptive parents decided that there was never any secret on it. So having my original name, and I was given the name Craig and Robertson as a family name afterwards. And since then, that's why I'm even my email, and that it's just who I am, So
wow, it's
I do get called Craig. I don't get called Edward.
You don't get the Edward any longer, no.
No, thanks very much.
Very good. So your age?
Just turned 50 past September, yeah.
50? Well, you're 3 months older than me. You're a very old man. I was 50 in December. And your home area, is that Faulthouse originally? Is that you?
Faulthouse. I grew up in Faulthouse, and just played badminton initially around about West Lothian.
Yeah.
Before starting to spread and travel a bit more.
Yeah. And so, was there much badminton? Did you say your dad worked at the community centre, and that got you into the courts whenever you fancied it? I suppose, is that right?
A combination of that. It was always quite easy. I mean, football was huge. It was a sort of mining type village back in the 70s and 80s and even the 90s. Things like football were really popular. Started playing a bit, but the people from Crofthead Primary School, which is now, I think, a nursing home, we had a head teacher called Hamish Miller, and he owned the sports shop in Bathgate.
Right.
So he was I think he went to university, played lots of sports, became a teacher and then a head teacher, but he was fanatical about sport. My class, and a lot of the boys and girls, well, not so much the girls, but a lot of the boys, were on so keen on football. And we somehow just started playing a bit of badminton.
Good, huh?
And as a team and as a group, we just became hooked. Hamish, being the head teacher, always wanted to give opportunities to people. I mean, there's lots of people, maybe 10 years, 15 years above me in Faulthouse, that will remember him being their head teacher.
Yeah.
He was there for a long, long time.
Brilliant.
But he was keen to get children active. And badminton just started from that. We started playing. It ended up that we'd go to school early. So we'd arrive at 7:45 in the morning. Because the hall was there. The cleaners were fine. Wow. So we'd arrive, play 7:45 to 9:45. And then we would come out for the break at, break time. And on a rotation, we decided amongst us, on a rotation, we ended up hitting shuttles. And then became lunchtime, and then became after school.
And who was that? Who were you with? Who were you with at that time? And do you still know them?
A guy called Peter Fife, Stuart Randall. They didn't go on to play a lot of badminton. But there was a girl called Lorna Ritchie as well that became sort of county champion, Lothian champion, was national squad. And again, primary 7 into first year, we sort of set that ball in motion for Faulthouse to become quite a prominent area for badminton.
It's absolutely it's bewildering, isn't it, when you go to the place? It's just one of those, but it is one of those places. I grew up in Northumberland in a wee village called Belford, and there was nothing to do. To be honest, there was nothing to do. It was a tiny wee village. There was a school, a primary school, and quite similar, I suppose, in size, probably to Faulthouse. And there was nothing really but. We played badminton 3 times a week, and frankly, I would have played every day if I could. And just because it's either you either get in trouble and hang about, and all the rest of it, or you do sport, don't you?
For us, it was, we just became hooked. However, Hamish was not a qualified badminton coach, but he was an all-round, had knowledge of lots of sports. And if there was children in the school wanted to try something, he made it happen.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
So there was that initial push from Hamish, and the guys below us saw us get a bit of success. So the primary 6s, and then they started the primary 5s playing. and then before it, if you got to like P3 or P4 as you wanted to go, it was just an opportunity. I think there's lots of guys in the country that I've met similar to Hamish. Someone like Dougie Walker.
What was that surname?
Sorry?
What was that surname, Hamish?
Hamish Miller.
Miller. Yeah, good.
Yeah. And it's
so important, isn't
it? Getting children active. And it just snowballed from there as a village.
But it's a fun thing, isn't it? It was fun, right? It wasn't. He didn't make it serious. He didn't make it a chore. He didn't make it kind of. It was it was fun. It was fun to do. That's the key thing, I think, of these things. That people like Bob Ula, I've got so much respect for them. These just want to bring more and more and more people into the game. It's just fantastic, I think.
Yeah. I think just the one thing about Hamish, when I mentioned that he had a sports shop, it did mean that fairly early on, when we became quite elite, we were hitting with some quality feather shuttles at the time.
Oh, really? Yeah.
When and also initially in school there was no charge to play. We set up Faltis Junior, he set up Faltis Junior Badminton Club. And then from that, the club became huge and people from outside came. But the sort of elite, or the better players within the programmes were playing every week for 20 pence with unlimited feather shuttles, thanks to Mr. Miller's.
I bet he sold quite a lot of rackets as well, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, he supplied everybody and anything. But I think the thing about Hamish was that if you couldn't afford and living in a village like Faltis, it was people weren't that affluent at all.
Sure.
You never went, if someone couldn't afford entry fees or, shoes for the tournament, you never went down to Mr. Miller, and I think he's sort of had an impact on so many people over the years.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Isn't that amazing? That's great. Do you have any brothers or sisters, Craig?
Yeah, I have. I have to think about that. three sisters and 3 brothers.
Anybody else? Did you say 3 sisters and 3 brothers? Yeah,
but I've got a brother from a different family, but just through my adoption. But no one plays badminton. I'm the only one.
None. Wow.
No.
One second, I'll just get you back on screen here. Wow, that's amazing. So what about? Does anybody? So was it Hamish Miller at the school that just got you into badminton? That was him. He introduced you to it, and that was that. Hamish
introduced me and a whole host of other people, that continued to play on. And that was around about 81, 82 time. You remember some of the things going to Meadowbank, for example, to play in the Christmas tournament with 10 people in a state car. And Hamish, it was okay then. In you go, no seatbelts, nothing. People sitting everywhere in bags in the lot, and we used to do that. And I think as a group developed, we started travelling out and about and getting to know some of the players from Lothian, some of the other coaches getting in Lothian squads. But I wasn't the only one. There was, for up until about 90. Until probably there was a legacy there up until Hamish died around about 1993. And there was a legacy of certain players coming through because we kept the club going, as long as we could. And I think his philosophy was, like you said earlier on, get people involved in the fun aspect. And you would get there. Yeah. As a coach, he would probably claim that he wasn't a coach, but when you look back at some of the, I would like to say, qualities and good traits that I've taken from my experiences.
Yes.
I was able to, the use of questioning. Back then, Hamish would ask you a question if you hadn't played well, and he'd watched your match. He would ask you a question, but he wouldn't give you the answer. He was expecting you to figure it out, and we'd always try to position to make you think about it, and you didn't get away with just dismissing I was rubbish, or it was a real. If you want to improve, and it wasn't about elite badminton, it was just about if you want to develop, then you need to take it seriously and think about it.
Yeah, amazing, and did it scare many people off, or was he just was a lot of people came and went?
No. He was amazing, just for all the children, and would do anything, to make sure that you got an opportunity.
And was he driving that? Was he driving the estate car?
Yeah, it was his car.
Brilliant.
It was his car.
Isn't that amazing? What age were you when you first played then? What age was that?
I reckon probably 9 or 10.
No,
and maybe by that started coming on to sort of primary 6 time. And again, because my dad worked in the community centre, I was able to just play quite often. And if the hall was free, then in you go.
That's good, isn't it? Isn't it amazing? And did you have an individual person that you played against when you went at that time?
Not at that point. I think, like any group, as people start to get stronger, all the stronger players tend to be. In the club in Falthouse in the hall, we had a sort of a top court, a middle court, and a beginner's court type thing.
Did you? Mm-hmm.
And it's a bit like when I ended up going to the adult club when I was about 13. I was kind of in the bottom. But again, as that young kid that wanted to do well, I was kind of looking up thinking, I really want to be up there with the top guys.
Really?
It's like anything. It was just a grading system that automatically worked.
Yeah.
For people, you didn't think you didn't get disappointed by your grade because all you had to do was beat some people and you get an opportunity. And
is that what? Did you do that thing where you have the three courts and the beginners there, and then the middle courts there, and then the top courts there? And when you first arrive, you go to the bottom court, and then when you win your game to the next court, and then you win the game, you go to the next court. And by the end of it, you'd be on the top court, and if you lost, every time you lost on the top court, you got the second court, and so it went on, kind of idea. It's what I remember about doing that was if you didn't go, you automatically went to the bottom court, and you had to win your way back up to the top. And it was terrible. Good fun.
Just one thing about Hamish was interesting as we got really busy. During the club was getting busy, so you then up playing up the sides and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And if you came in and you were really young and hadn't played, he would be the one that would take you aside and play behind the court with you, teach you to hit it, and be able to play. And I remember after I was about 14 or so, Hamish pulling me aside and saying, "I think I've got a little cracker. I think she might be national champion within a year or two." And I'm looking around the hall thinking,
"What are you on about?"
What? Yep, sure. 3 years later, there was a girl and a boy actually as well started winning nationals and stuff. They came back and said to me, "Remember I told you about these kids?" I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "All right," but he obviously saw something in them. And to be fair, he saw something in everybody.
And what was the progression like, Craig? When he saw somebody with that potential, did he just focus on them, making them better and better and better, or was there a progression where he would move them onto a different coach or anything like that?
Well, the system was probably more game-based because it was only by mid-80s that we started going to squads and learning from other coaches that we could practice and things. Yeah, in Falthouse we played games. Everyone played games, and that was kind of how you moved on. But the one thing I do remember is I moved from school, from primary to secondary. Anne Johnson, who was a West Lothian player and international badminton player as well, Anne was my PE teacher.
Right.
So I kind of went from there, and then Anne introduced me to her brother Jimmy, who then between them sort of took me over to see Andy Cook. I know you've had Andy on. Yeah. And at that was when I started heading out and seeing more coaches. But the interesting thing about Hamish was he wasn't the type of coach that was keen for me as an up-and-coming potential player. He wanted to hold on to me. He wanted to give us all opportunities. So I remember Hamish taking me to see Andy Cook and drive me over. He used to drive me to Alison Morgan's. He used to drive me into Glasgow to hit with Alan Thompson. And just he never once claimed to be the great. Brilliant. He did lots of things for lots of people.
And all the time he'd be learning, right? All the time he'd be learning as well, right?
Yeah, but and he would watch all your matches and everything. Was just a total all-round motivating person to get you to that. But he wasn't worried about someone else taking credit for results. He was never in it for that. Yeah. Which made it easy for you to sort of then go to other coaches. Yeah.
Selfless, you'd call it selfless, wouldn't you?
Totally. And I think that's one of the things that it doesn't worry me. Having been in the school of sport coaching, I don't coach. I'm not the coach anymore, but being the coach at school of sport, I was never worried about someone coming along getting better and then choosing to go to work with someone else, because in a school that I'm always going to lose them anyway. But the person needs to be happy working with who they're at. So, it's kind of that stuck with me over the years.
How did they split the day in the school of sport? If you've got classes, you've got English, you've got maths, you've got physics.
In the school of sport, if you're in the fifth year and you take 3 hires, so you could take 3 or 4 hires. Of
course, you've got time.
Year 5 and the same in 6. So potentially you can get 6 or advanced or 8 or whatever you choose. But pretty much a day is divided by double period of sport. Then you go to maths, then you go to English, and it varies in the week. So it's in theory another subject, but it's a subject that you're choosing that you want to excel in.
It's very, very clever because you think, I mean, my son's 19, and when he was doing his hires, there was so many. He would come home, he would do all these things in his spare, in his times. He would come home and he would do all the rest of it, and kind of in between, obviously, and he would just go. They would do sport in that time. It's amazing, right? It's brilliant. Yeah, what a fantastic idea. How long has that been going? Did you tell me that already?
Just over 20 years.
Is it really as long as that? Wow. What age were you in 9 or 10? Where did you stop? Why and where did you stop playing? So Hamish Miller was a big influence, really.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you remember your first racket?
It could have been. I don't even know what I said to you when you asked me that. It could have been a gola with the black gola with the red and black terry towel grip, or it was possibly a 4.5. But I think I might have had some wooden ones before that as well. But I wasn't that into it that I could remember what they were.
Could you not? And you still have toweling grips? Do you still use them?
Yeah.
Do you?
I think I went maybe about 25 years ago. I started changing to some of the synthetic things and the new things that were bringing out multicolour. Yeah. But I just love toweling grips. There's only one way forward, and it's toweling grips.
Toweling grips are just. I just remember people. But I've always used those Supergraphs. I don't think Supergraphs when I played, but when I was younger. But it's that style of thing, and I just remember I had a pal in Berwick who always had toweling grips. They fall apart. Those things just fall apart. It's just awful. Yeah. Have them for like 2 years, never change your grip, kind of idea, What was the name of the first club? Was that Fauldhouse?
Yeah, it would have been Fauldhouse Junior Badminton Club.
Fauldhouse.
And I was Crofthead Primary, and then on to Fauldhouse Junior Badminton Club, and then back then in West Lothian, club badminton was pretty big. Comparison to what we've got now, league size and stuff. I remember the first time I got to play for West Lothian in the senior ranks was against an Irish team that came over, and I think there was 16 couples for mixed, 16 for men's doubles, and 16 for ladies doubles. And I played with a lady that was about 4 times my age. To be fair, I was the young guy. And they thought, this boy's quite good, we'll give him a shot. So I was playing number like 15 or 16 mixed doubles for the county.
Wow.
And that was based on the league sizes. I mean, I remember even just starting league matches back then when I got an opportunity to play. And eventually we had a good enough strength that Hamish put a junior team into the senior league. But we were probably in Division 6 or 7, and that was only in West Lothian, not even the Lothian leagues or, any of the bigger leagues. That was like locally. There was lots of people, lots of clubs playing.
It was probably quite intimidating being from such a small village to go to the big city. Even to go into like the Meadow Bank at the time was probably quite intimidating. Having come from Fauldhouse Community Centre to walk into Meadow Bank, suddenly you look around and go, "Wow!" kind of idea, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it was like anything. You were turning up, and there was lots of players. I mean, even I'm thinking back some of the very first people that I played. Mark Cunningham, a guy called Dallas Reach, and that was probably when I saw some of the stronger Lothian players play. Like, it was Christmas tournament, so it would have been guys like John McMillan, Gary Stango, these type of guys that were playing, and you're young thinking, I would love to be as good as these guys. And I think that was the motivation for us all.
Yeah.
And then getting a bit of success. I think getting a bit of success then brought us all onto that.
Is West Lothian playing in the Lothian leagues? Would they play against, like, say, East Lothian, Mid Lothian? Would that all be? Is that all one thing? How does that work, Craig?
Back then, that was in the city county system for the juniors. Right. It was more, but the playing in the leagues would have been the. I think in Edinburgh, did you have the Tartan League?
Yeah, well,
the Lothian League, and there was maybe a Churches League as
well.
Mixed, so it was just trying to play, and all we were trying to do was get opportunities to play. But again, every time as kids, every time we went anywhere, Hamish was the one that was driving us to matches.
Isn't it? That's and
just developed.
And was he in the team?
No.
Oh,
he would never.
Was he not? No.
I'll tell you a story about Hamish, and it kind of, from a psychological point of view, me having no idea. We played the West Lothian primary schools. I played with a guy called Peter, and we won the doubles.
Right.
So that was like my first trophy, and could not believe that we were West Lothian champions. All that kind of stuff. It was just great. And the following week had to be the singles. Now Hamish used to play all of us, all the boys. He would play at least once a week, and it was just, you knew when your turn was coming round. You're getting I'm going to beat him this week. We were never good enough to beat him. And I played Hamish on the Friday afternoon at the community centre, and I beat him 15-10. So by the time I turned up on the Saturday morning, I didn't know this at the time. I'm looking at the other kids thinking, I've just beaten Mr. Miller. There's no chance you guys are beating me. And there was just this confidence of,
all of a sudden,
how is it possible that another child could? And then, so I went on and I won the singles. And about 2 or 3 years later, I was sitting in his sports shop and we were just chatting about badminton. By this point, I was maybe third or fourth year. And someone came in and was speaking to Hamish and he said, let me introduce you to Craig. And he said, yeah. He said, the guy said, have you won much? And Hamish says, let me tell you a story. He said, you won the West Lothian singles tournament. I says, yeah, I did. He said, you remember you played me on the Friday? And I was dead pleased. Yeah, I remember. I beat you 15-10.
No,
he said to me,
no.
We played on the Monday or Tuesday. What was the score? And I think he beat me 15-love or 15-1. And he looked at me and took a draw of his cigarette and it hit me.
He let you win?
And I was devastated. I was a bit devastated, but years later on, I realised from a psychological point of view, he wanted to give me confidence before I went to the event.
Wow.
So he laid out, let me win. I thought I was flying. But looking back, I was disappointed on the Monday or Tuesday that he beat me after me beating him on the Friday. But when you piece it together, do you know that sort of interesting psychological lesson dead early on?
Love that. Love it. You're standing there.
But yeah, he was quite a good player, but never competed with.
Yeah. And what shuttles did you use at your club? At Faulthouse?
I think some of the Carlton ones probably in the plastic side.
Mavis 300s.
No,
before that.
No, I'm sure they were the Yonex ones. The Carlton ones were Carlton at one point brought out shuttles in the early 80s that kind of were meant to look like feathers, and the plastic was a bit thinner.
Yeah.
And the sometimes, because it was so thin and flimsy, it would fly off and stuff. But a bit with the plastic stuff, because the senior club was on the Sunday on the adults, they played with feather shuttles. I think maybe RSL at that point. But quite often, if you were playing football or something in the hall and it would hit the roof and the shuttles would fall down straight over, and you kept the feather shuttles. So quite early on, we were exposed to some feathers.
Isn't it amazing how spoiled people are nowadays? You know, you look at it now and you think what they've got. That's good. Here's a question for you. Did you have what kind of trainers did you wear? High tech squash.
Oh. High-tech squash or badminton, whatever way round the wear, and eventually Fred Perry t-shirts, shorts. Is that first?
Do you remember there used to be
and Dunlop green flash?
Dunlop green flash. I was always high-tech squash. I think it wasn't Asics. I can't remember. I think it was high-tech squash. Maybe it had been Dunlop side at one time. But I remember there used to be a Dunlop badminton as well as squash that were blue. Do you remember high-tech squash were green and then no, I play badminton. Mine are blue. It's brilliant. You can still buy them. Have you ever read? You got Sports Direct. You still see them.
Yeah.
And so your first coach, was that Hamish Miller?
It was Hamish Miller, yeah, and I suppose he exposed me to lots of other opportunities, you know, out and about from a coaching sense. Even in West Lothian, we had someone like Bill Bissett, you know, Ann Johnson was there, Jimmy was there as well. A bit later on, Gary Stango started, he was already living in West Lothian, but by that point, I've probably doing a little bit of work with Gary. But again, I was exposed to national programs, Lothian programs as well.
Go back to your starting. Go back to starting, Craig. Do you remember the first thing you ever learned when you were taken on a court? No. You don't remember drills of any kind. Was he a very physical coach? Was it about the exercise, or was it about a lot about the technique, or was a lot of training involved? Was he a performance-ish kind of guy, or what?
A little bit of tactical, a little bit of fun. Saying that he was a coach, he would never set up a practice and say we're going to do these things. What he might have done is said to you, you've just played that match of the weekend and you were continuing to make mistakes in that. If there's fewer people in the hall today, and he would just maybe get you to try it a few times. But it was more through discussion and trying to get you to understand and take on board, responsibility to make a difference in you. It was a lot of the early development for me was just about gameplay.
Was it?
And having that ability and stuff.
Is there anything you think? So how long was it when you played before you were coached, like properly? I suppose that was like proper coaching.
probably by the time I got in the Lothian squad by 12, 13, there were some more experienced coaches, including guys like John Williamson, Douglas Walker.
Yeah.
Do you know, they were taking squads and setting up some practices. So that was probably my earliest.
I was coach. My coaching came really late, actually. I think I was probably about 14 or 15. And I remember, like, proper coaching, that is, I played a lot, but I definitely scrambled my way up and just kind of learned. And I think by the time I actually had coaching, I think I had picked up bad habits that I couldn't shake. And I think that's probably a regret. You know, you're picking them up early and not, I guess, not finding those faults, creating those faults at the start is a thing, isn't it? Maybe that wouldn't happen now. I don't know. That was me.
I think to be fair, Martin, I do think that as a country we've made a shift because we've not got a lot of clubs. We don't have, so for example, some of the top junior players would struggle to beat adult club players. You know, well, top juniors, like not the top guys, yes. But they would struggle from a tactical point of view because if they're not getting exposed to any unorthodox play. Yes. Or anyone that has got a certain style or a different grip, it's because if all the children are just playing together, but not having strong club system in the country and then strong leagues means that they don't have that exposure.
Yeah.
You know, so and then from a tactical point of view, sometimes it's difficult to catch up. It takes them a bit longer. So, I mean, I know Badminton Scotland at the minute are looking to develop clubs and build that strength throughout the country. But I think just getting exposure early on. When I was a kid, I remember playing against people and you're frustrated thinking, I'm much better than they are. You never beat them.
That's right.
Never beat them. You know, and you couldn't figure out why, but you had to then figure out what can I do that's different to try and, and that sort of tactical.
We see that at our clubs. I play Nomads in Edinburgh and you see it all the time. You know, you see these, amazing young players coming in, conceivably great singles players and get tied up in knots in doubles, by somebody in his mid-40s kind of thing, throwing them, some really unusual.
Yeah, but again, giving them the opportunity to play in maybe an adult environment and more club.
Oh, I think it's great. I think it's
would be the way forward.
I just love it anyway. I love club badminton anyway, so I love badminton, so I just like playing it. And it's I'd never take it seriously enough. I've never to be that good. That's my dog gone mad. Do you remember your first tournament and trophy?
Yeah, I suppose I spoke a wee bit about that earlier. The Lothian, the first tournament that I played in was probably some local things that I don't remember results-wise, but Christmas tournament I got to the quarterfinals, and I was dead pleased and then got absolutely stumped. And again, that was a bit of a motivator, thinking, these guys are good, but I want to be that good.
Yeah.
And that kind of, I suppose we just went home and went back to practice, and I think I ended up winning the primary schools, as I said to you.
Yeah.
And from there, sort of winning things in West Lothian became, it was quite regular. And then from that, I started playing into Lothian and out into the country. Yeah. From that point.
And do you travel a lot? Like every week you're travelling away and that kind of thing as well? Or?
Yeah. Again, it was Hamish that took us to things in the early days. So, and he would organise, events. I would say we started playing once we realised what was available to us. We would travel to wherever, playing in Highland tournaments, the Borders tournaments, Dumfries and Galloway, and then through some of the other opportunities I got, started travelling into England and stuff as well.
These people like Hamish, they become a real part of your life, don't they? When somebody focuses their time on you, and when they pass, I just think it's so, that these people are so influential in how you're being, how you create and the way you think about things. And it's terrible. It's obviously it's going to happen, but it's just amazing how profoundly somebody can affect your life, What was your most successful event? We haven't even really talked about singles or doubles or mixed.
I probably had singles at heart for many, many years and had quite a bit of success as a senior in Scotland. To a point, never won the nationals. However, won invitation singles and probably won all the other major events, if you like, at different times.
Was that your love? Did you love it, singles?
Yeah, I think looking back, I didn't play. I was probably too impatient, and didn't quite manage to. But I suppose sometimes there's reasons that you end up going down a slightly different route. So I was playing singles, doubles, and mixed up until a certain point, and then I started playing singles, doubles. And getting into the senior team was the first time that I played for the senior team. I was almost like backup, so I was like fifth guy in. I could have played a bit of singles, a bit of doubles to help out, and a bit of mixed. I played the individual, but I was then, I was supporting. I suppose for me, it was then trying to think, how do I get myself from being that fifth guy to try and get first in the team sheet? And again, it's just progression, and but surrounded by a lot of strong characters, including guys like Russell Hogg, Jim, who you spoke to recently, Bruce Flockart, Kenny Middlewis, and Dan Travers was just by the time I was kind of arriving, Dan was still playing but was already taking on the national team, so he was then the national coach at that point as well.
And then when going on, I suppose. So who was your one last form question? Who's your main competition growing up? Was there somebody that you couldn't beat and you'd like fought to beat? I think that was Hamish Miller. It was somebody.
It was up to a point when I did get to the point where I could beat him. He was just quite a satisfaction. Although years later I realised that he didn't let me win the first time.
But I think he was your motivation, if you like, or was there somebody else? What do you think?
I think for me there was lots of people. There was a guy called David Wallace in the early days that was just totally beating everyone in the country. Really? And it was sort of, well, how can we get to that point? And then by the time I was 14, playing under 15 and 16, the guys that were older, Jim Mailer, Gordon Haldane, these guys became my target, and they were sort of leading the way. I think I was fortunate through playing, especially there was never any easy options. You were never getting picked for the team because there was no guys. There was just loads of people around at the time. And guys like Jim, who was a couple of years older, was already starting to hit the senior team as well. Bruce Flockart arrived probably on the scene as a 16, 17-year-old. He played before but wasn't quite as strong. By the time he was 16 on to 17, 18, then he was really tough to beat. David Gilmour as well. So I was always surrounded by strong competition.
Very strong,
And back then you just played all the events. You played singles, doubles, mixed doubles, without really thinking about the consequences or focusing on any one. You just wanted to learn and play.
And did you often go to Andy Cook?
Andy Cook. I ended up went to Andy quite a lot, but he wasn't my main coach at that time in the early days. But there was an opportunity through some adult stuff again through Jimmy Johnson, and he would drive me over, pick me up, take me over. But eventually, I think when we ended up getting lottery funding, we had enough funds to then pay Andy was professional coach. So Bruce Flockart had already been working with Andy, and I used to go, even during my institute, Scottish Institute time days, I would go once a week and do some single stuff with Bruce and Andy as well. So even by the age of 28, 29, I was still heading over to Andy, but we had other opportunities as well. Did
you hear Jim talking about going down to Wimbledon? Don't know if you heard.
I didn't. I've not had a chance.
Haven't you? It was good. Yeah, he was saying 3 or 4 times a year would go down to Wimbledon, and you kind of get a nod from somebody that Morton Frost and the guys were coming over from Denmark for a weekend, and he would go down and stay at a line judge that he knew, and just basically walk up to the side of the court and said, "Fancy a game of singles to Morton Frost." It's absolutely brilliant. Absolutely.
No, Morton. I wouldn't be surprised if he probably accepted at one point if he was given the opportunity.
He had a few games.
Quite a kind guy.
I've asked him for an interview. He hasn't replied yet. He'll maybe come back. We'll see. And when did you go? I think that's probably enough of those questions. And when did you go from? So when you played badminton, you love badminton. You're at school. When it come to finishing school, is it one of them things where you say, I don't know what I'm going to do, and somebody says to you, career guidance, what do you love? And you say, I love badminton, I know that much. So what can I do?
I think it was very clear for me. I was going to school, and I didn't do great at school, and my focus was on playing badminton.
Was it?
But there was no badminton to be played other than just playing. There was no system. There was no so I'm in West Lothian, just this guy. I think if I had said to people that I want to be a footballer, they would have said, yeah, that's okay then. But actually, anytime you teach, what do you want to be? I want to be a badminton player. There's no point in that. So I ended up leaving school. I was at Whitman Academy. So I left school, went to college in Bathgate for a year, passed a lifeguard qualification amongst other things, and ended up going down the leisure attendant route for a few years because the flexibility working for the City Council and being able to go off allowed me to train, and I was in a sports centre every day.
Yes, I can see that.
So I trained away up until about sort of 23, 24, and then I left my job and became a full-time coach. But again, that was to become a person that had more time and more flexibility to train.
And then, so a sports centre, perfect job, I suppose you would say, wouldn't you? Working in a sports centre, the halls are there at lunchtime.
I don't think I would get off now working in a sports centre and disappearing for 2 hours to do some training. Back then, it was you were quite well supported, and that's okay. We're not busy. Off you go.
No, but just to be around sport, you want to be around sport, I guess, right?
Yeah. Doing that was good. It did give me a lot of flexibility, and I just sort of continued to train locally. And then within the system, play matches, get as much exposure as possible, at that point. But by the time so about 24 to 27, I played the World Champs in Glasgow when they were in I remember I played singles and I was pretty awful. I lost, I was quite disappointed. I played a bit better in my doubles. I was quite disappointed, and a Danish guy came up and said to me, "Look, I've watched your match. We've been tracking your performances for the last year or so, some of the tournaments. We're looking for someone for our club."
Oh, really?
I was like, "Oh,
really?
I never thought about that." So through a bit of time, I ended up speaking to him a lot, and I had a friend, a guy called Brian Sutherland, that was already in Denmark, but he was at one of the top clubs. So he wasn't playing the first team, but he was at one of these top clubs in Denmark called Lilleå. And Brian had said to me, "Look, if you go to that club," I think it was in Esbjerg, which is kind of a fishing village on the coast, and it's nowhere near Copenhagen where everything happens. So Brian said, "Let me speak to the club." They popped my name up. By this point, I was already playing the world circuit, if you like, and my ranking was going up a bit. And I got an opportunity to go and stay just north of Copenhagen, I think it was, and play in the Danish league for a year. Which was amazing. It was just.
And did you live there?
Experience. Yes, I ended up staying with Brian in a flat.
Wow.
And again, the flat was provided by the club.
Wow. And how does that work, Craig? How does it? I'm just curious to know how it pays. Is it all sponsored? Does somebody sponsor a league, or what? How does a player get money? Where does the money come from? That's what I'm interested in.
Well, for me, I was paying for a lot of things because I didn't have a sponsor, so I was paying.
Yeah, really.
My training was free within the club. The opportunities to compete were free, but bearing in mind the opportunities to compete is at the top end. So back then, there was a couple of the top Danes played in the German league because there was more money. But most of the top Danish, and we're talking guys like Høyer Larsen had won the Olympics, Peter Rasmussen, these type of guys were all playing in different clubs. That was the norm. It's still the norm.
Yes.
You grow up and you play in one of your clubs in Denmark. So playing some of the team matches, the opportunities were huge. From that. The only reason I came back was because the lottery funding kicked in along with the institute.
Right.
So the first year I got a few pounds. After that I got full time, which then allowed me to push on. I think if the lottery hadn't come along and the institute hadn't come along, I think I would have stayed in Denmark.
Really? Yeah.
At that time.
And it's now a thing where people get paid for club, right? That people get paid for going, they're paid per match, they're paid for this, they're paid for that, right? Also, can you speak Danish?
by the end of a year, I could understand if they were speaking about badminton type things and a team meeting, for example. They always do a team meeting in Danish, and there was myself and one other guy that didn't speak any Danish. So they would do it in Danish, and then the coach would come and say, "Here's what we're looking for. Here's who you're going to play against. Tactically, you've got these guys." But it was the very first match that I played. I went from Copenhagen. They asked me if I played in the second team. When I first arrived, they said, "Can you play for the second team the weekend?" I was like, "That, yeah, definitely." So the second team was in the second tier. And she says, "No problem, I'll pick you up at, say, 8:30 on Saturday morning. I'll take you." I says, "Who are we playing?" And she said, "You're playing against VB Badminton Club." So I don't know where anything is. So she picks me up and takes me to the airport, and we fly from Copenhagen across to Aarhus. And then we drive to the hall. And then I'd do all this in a day. And I phoned my dad at night and said, like, "How's your day?" I was like, "Well, you're not going to believe this." But that was normal. How else are you going to play an away match? It's in a different island, jumping a flight. So the exposure and just that realisation of this is pretty, badminton is important to this country. And it continues.
I think that sounds amazing. It's what a life. What a life. Let's just make sure I've got no other important questions before I let you go. I think the idea of this, Craig, to be honest with you, is just to introduce, to learn about you, but and get to know you. And everybody's the same. I'm always interested to different topics come up and things come up in my head, and I guess we can speak over time and have different meetings about different things. I think I've got a great vision of kind of eventually everyone I speak to is so interested, and I learn so much, and I've got so many questions, and I think of different things, and then I'll come back and talk to you about that again, and it just seems to at the moment to have a certain stream of, of new amazing stories. It's incredible. So it's really good. Yeah, it's really good. Clubs do you play in it?
But I think Martin, for me, that the interesting thing about badminton is that.
Yes, please. Yeah, that's a good question.
Through time, I've experienced lots of things, but the badminton community as a whole is pretty supportive. And I've got friends that I've known now for 35 to 40 years through playing badminton, and I think that's one of the things that's been really positive. The amount of people that I've met, I've travelled the world doing it, but the amount of people that I've met, and even just, Scottish friends and well, you could call them family now, but it's one of these things that you play. And I've started playing the vets recently. I never stopped playing. I played up to 35. Kind of didn't stop playing. Played a few tournaments, and I played vets from 40. But some of the guys that went away early and had a family came back and played. Someone like Jim, he stopped, didn't play. He played vets once or twice, but he stopped. However, still speak to these guys all the time. Or, try and catch up.
I think it's. I said on Valentine's Day. I said. I have love for everybody that loves badminton. I love everybody that loves badminton, because anybody that kind of goes to bed at night and lies in the bed, lies on after a club badminton thinking, why did I do that? Why did I do that? Why did I drop it at the net? If I hadn't served it in the net, my serving was so unreliable, or oh God, I kept on getting pushed in the back corner, or whatever it was. And people have that, don't they?
Yeah, but don't you think one of the buzzes about playing badminton is that when you turn up, you're still looking for that perfect game. It's almost like if you're a snooker player, you're always striving for a 1-4-7. Now with badminton, I was always looking for that perfect match. Never once got it.
Yeah, I'm not afraid of getting beat. I've always been quite happy to get beat as well. I'm quite happy with that.
But there's always just a different scenario that plays out, even though you play the same person. And it's okay saying, well, he does this and this. But if he does something different, it makes you think.
Yeah.
And I think that's the challenge every time you turn up to play.
Brilliant. Good. I'll let you go on for the afternoon with your afternoon. Thank you. That was awesome, Craig.
Listen, thanks for having me.
Great to meet you, and we'll speak again.